Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources articles, research your notes, and really dig in, extracting those, important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Yeah, think of us as guides, really, helping you navigate all that information to get straight to what matters.
That's the idea. Sifting through the material you bring us, pulling out critical details, connecting dots, maybe sparking a few aha moments.
Hopefully, yeah. No getting lost in the weeds, just focused understanding.
And for this deep dive, wow, we've got a fascinating stack. Some pretty distinct sources covering, well, quite different recent developments.
Very different, yeah.
We'll be looking at some potentially pretty big shifts coming out of Apple.
Okay.
Then a genuinely unsettling report about how a nation state is exploiting remote work.
Right. That one definitely caught my attention.
And finally, something simpler, but I think for many, a very welcome update to a major messaging app.
So from consumer tech strategy to international cybercrime, and then back to our daily digital lives. It's quite a spectrum today.
Absolutely. Reflects the diverse info you brought us. Our sources guiding this. Reports from The Verge, InfoBay, which draws on WSJ and FBI InfoPhone Arena, and 9 to 5 Google.
Okay, quite a mix. Let's open them up then, see what's inside.
Agreed. Let's dive in.
Where should we start?
Okay, let's start with the first one. This report from The Verge, citing Bloomberg. It touches on Apple and something, well, fundamental, how they name their operating system.
Ah, yes, this one. It feels like, a small detail, the naming convention. But as the source digs into it, it could signal a larger strategic shift, how Apple wants users to sort of perceive their software updates.
Exactly. The core idea here, Apple is reportedly moving away from just numbering its OS sequentially. iOS 18 to iOS 19, macOS, that kind of thing.
Right.
Instead, the plan is apparently to mark them by the year.
That seems logical on the surface. A calendar year, annual updates, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the source adds this wrinkle that makes it much more interesting.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, according to this reporting. The version numbers will apparently align with the year after the update is released.
Okay.
The comparison the source uses is car models.
The car model analogy, right. So the big iOS update, we expect maybe this June, released in the fall.
Yeah, what we might think of as iOS 18.
Would instead be called iOS 26, is that it?
That's the idea. The model year 2026 software, effectively.
Okay. Releasing the 26 model software in late 2025.
That's the reported logic. It feels a bit, counterintuitive maybe at first.
Yeah.
But the source is pretty specific, pointing to that car industry practice. A 2025 model car often shows up in late 2024.
And it's not just iOS, right? This model year idea applies across the board.
That's what the sources indicate, yeah. iPadOS 26, macOS 26, watchOS 26, tvOS 26, and visionOS 26 too.
So every major system update released around the same time this year becomes part of this unified 26 generation.
Right, a single identifier across the whole software ecosystem.
That move towards, let's call it synchronicity in naming, even with the shifted number, that's telling.
How so?
Well, it creates a consistent rhythm, a predictable marker for their annual software refresh. It gets rid of the current discrepancy.
Where iOS is 18, but watchOS is 12, visionOS is 2.
Yeah, exactly. The source mentions that lack of consistency as a potential driver for this change.
Right. Makes sense. It simplifies things internally and externally. Instead of explaining why different OS versions launch together, you just say, these are all the 26 versions.
Much cleaner messaging. And where would we expect to hear about this officially?
The source points squarely at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, WWDC.
WWDC.
Kicks off June 9th, keynote at 1 p.m. ET. That's always the big software reveal event, so
Yeah.
the timing fits perfectly.
It's Apple's OS showcase, basically. So yeah, logical place to unveil something like this, a fundamental labeling change. Did the sources mention anything else coming alongside this?
Yes, interestingly. They also touch on expectations for a design overhaul. The reporting suggests we might see a visual refresh across the operating systems, drawing inspiration, apparently, from the visionOS interface.
Ah, that makes sense too. Apple likes to unify experiences, right? If they're bringing in a new generational marker like 26, it's a natural time to introduce a refreshed look and feel. Maybe pull design cues from their newest platform, visionOS.
So, okay, let's connect this back to you, the listener. What does this potential shift really mean day to day?
Well, I think for the average user, it could actually simplify understanding the software lifecycle.
How so?
Instead of tracking these, seemingly random number jumps across devices, you get a clear yearly marker. 26 software, 27 software.
Right. You know that around the same time each year, Apple drops the next model year software.
Exactly. It makes the updates feel more like predictable generational leaps, tied to a concept we already get, like car models. It might even make talking about it easier. I'm running the 26 software on my phone and watch.
Standardizes the mental model, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a small branding thing, but it could subtly change user perception. Make it easier to think about keeping devices up to date. From simple version numbers to a calendar-aligned model concept.
And, potentially it sets the stage for future stuff. Service bundles, hardware cycles tied to this annual model year. It's a foundational shift in how they talk about their software evolution.
Absolutely. Okay, so from how Apple might brand its software to a very, very different story. Much more concerning.
Okay.
Let's shift gears. This next one is from Infobay, based on the Wall Street Journal and FBI insights. It digs into this really sophisticated scheme involving North Korea and the remote work landscape.
Right. This is a stark reminder, isn't it, about the global reach of cyber threats, illicit activities. What's really striking here is the sheer audacity and the method described. Using the distributed nature of remote work to get around sanctions, generate cash.
It's pretty wild how they've adapted. The overall scheme, as these sources detail it, based on FBI findings, involves highly trained North Korean IT workers.
Okay.
They're reportedly posing as American employees to get remote jobs in U.S. companies.
Posing as Americans.
Wow.
And the goal, according to the report, is twofold. One, illegally generate hundreds of millions of dollars annually for North Korea, bypassing sanctions.
I need this financial motive.
And two, critically steal data.
So it's basically a state-sponsored infiltration of the global remote job market, turning these work models we all use now into a vector for, illicit finance and spying.
And the sources give specific examples. They detail the case of a woman named Christina Chapman, 50 years old, reportedly operated something they call a laptop farm from her home in Maryland.
A laptop farm. You immediately picture rows of machines, right?
Yeah.
Likely connected via remote access tools controlled from afar. It's a tangible picture of the infrastructure behind this. And she allegedly helped facilitate access for these North Korean workers into U.S. companies, receiving computers, setting them up for remote access.
Okay, so like a facilitator on the ground.
And the scale mentioned.
Oh.
It's staggering. The sources say Chapman's alleged operation alone collected $17.1 million from over 300 U.S. companies.
17 million from just one node in this network.
That's what's reported. But the broader scheme involves, they say, thousands of North Korean IT workers globally, generating hundreds of millions annually for the regime.
Thousands of operatives, potentially highly skilled, embedded in companies, earning salaries under false pretenses. That points to serious organization, state backing. It's like an economic engine disguised as legitimate work.
And how do they get these jobs? The reports explain the mechanics. They apparently send out just thousands and thousands of applications,
Flooding the system.
presenting themselves as qualified IP specialists, sometimes using stolen U.S. identities, the sources mentioned, using platforms like LinkedIn to look legit.
Okay, so that adds another layer of harm, doesn't it? Not just defrauding companies, but compromising innocent U.S. citizens' identities to enable this whole thing.
Right. And cybersecurity firms have weighed in too, according to the sources. CrowdStrike, for example, they've reportedly found about 150 instances of North Korean workers on their clients' networks.
150 cases. Just from one firm's clients.
And they've detected these laptop farms in at least 8 U.S. states.
8 states. Okay, so this isn't some niche thing. It's widespread, actively exploited. The sources also mentioned performance varies, right? Some get fired quickly, others hold down 6-figure jobs for years.
Exactly. It highlights the detection challenge for companies. Some are probably very good, others maybe not so much. But with that volume of attempts, some are bound to get through and stay. And the data theft part is particularly chilling. The reports mention finding custom programs on seized laptops.
Custom software.
Yeah. Allowed them to do things like spy on Zoom meetings, download sensitive data without being detected.
Wow. Okay, that goes way beyond just financial fraud then. Custom surveillance software that points to clear intent for espionage or strategic data theft, maybe for ransom later, or national security goals. The source mentioning Signia finding this custom software confirms it's not just off-the-shelf tools being misused. These are purpose-built.
It's serious. Now, regarding Christina Chapman's case, the sources detail her legal situation. She pleaded guilty, federal charges, wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering.
Okay.
Her reported take from the scheme was around $177,000. She faces a potential sentence, just over 9 years. Sentencing is set for July. The reports also touch on her personal situation, living in a homeless shelter, using GoFundMe. It's complex.
It is a complex picture, yeah. Admitted guilt to facilitating this huge scheme, but her current circumstances, they highlight the severe personal fallout. Even if maybe the full picture, the North Korean connection, wasn't totally clear to her initially.
And the Department of Justice is clearly taking this seriously. The sources note they're offering rewards for info on North Korean IT agents, the facilitators, even listing specific aliases they're looking for.
Right. So this whole scheme, as reported by the FBI and detailed in these sources, it really makes you question the vulnerabilities in remote work, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Connecting it to the bigger picture, it just underscores how sophisticated state actors are adapting, using the trust, the distributed nature of remote hiring to run massive illicit finance and data theft ops, getting around sanctions in a totally new way. And just to be clear, we're relaying the information and findings presented in these sources, trying to understand the dynamics as reported.
Exactly. It's a critical insight from the material you provided. Why should this story matter to you, the listener? Well, if you work remotely, if your company hires remotely, if you care about cybersecurity, identity theft, international affairs, this reveals active, evolving risks, global threats, finding pathways right into our digital workspaces.
It really compels companies and individuals to rethink vetting, network security protocols, just overall digital hygiene in this remote-first world. That boundary between work life and potential state-sponsored threats, it's getting blurrier.
It's definitely a sobering look at the challenges. Very different domain from our first topic.
Indeed. From potential Apple branding shifts to state-sponsored remote infiltration. Quite the range today.
Okay, let's pivot again, this time to something affecting, well, everyday communication. Based on sources from Phone Arena and 9to5 Google, much simpler news, this one, but I think it could genuinely improve the daily experience for a lot of people.
Ah, the Google Messages update. Yeah, sometimes the most impactful updates are the ones that just streamline a basic frequent interaction, right?
They really are. The key thing here is a small, maybe minor seeming, but highly functional update, reportedly rolling out to Google Messages.
Okay.
It's adding an RCS badge right next to contacts in your new chat list, if they support rich communication services.
Oh, that's good. That addresses that persistent little friction point. I imagine many Android users have hit this, especially now trying to message iPhone users, with Apple starting to support RCS.
Exactly. The previous annoyance, as the sources describe it, if you wanted to know if a contact had RCS enabled, meaning you could use modern messaging features with them.
You had to actually start a chat first.
Right. Tap their name, open the conversation screen, then squint at the message input field to see RCS message or text message.
Yeah, the test and see approach. Initiate just to figure out the capabilities. Adds guesswork, extra steps.
So the improvement. Simple but effective. This new badge shows up proactively. In your contact list, when you go to start a new chat, instant visual cue, see the badge. You can use RCS features with that person. Boom.
It's a small piece of UI info delivered at the perfect time before you start typing. It empowers the user, makes the capabilities visible up front. Much better.
The sources say this is currently showing up for users on the latest beta version of Google Messages, specifically version 2050527 RC000.
Okay, beta. That usually means it's pretty stable. Likely on path for a wider public rollout soon then.
Seems likely, yeah. Beta rollouts are often that final stage before general release.
Good news for potentially millions of users soon.
And what's really notable here, the sources confirm this, the badge works for contacts, whether they're on Android or iOS.
Ah, that's crucial, especially now with Apple starting to add RCS support to iMessage. That cross-platform capability is key. For years, that SMS-MMS fallback between Android and iPhone, the whole green bubble thing, it's been a pain point.
Totally.
With Apple adopting RCS, the potential for richer messaging between platforms finally opens up. This badge becomes the user-facing signal, tells you when that richer stuff is available, no matter the device on the other end.
Removes the ambiguity. And just quickly, what RCS actually brings, based on the sources, features you're used to from WhatsApp, iMessage, stuff like that.
Like typing indicators?
Yeah, seeing when someone's typing, read receipts, sharing higher quality images and video without them getting all blocky.
Better group chats, too. And often, end-to-end encryption, depending on the implementation.
Right. It's about modernizing that core messaging beyond SMS and MMS, which are, well, ancient protocols, really.
Designed for a totally different era of mobile communication, yeah.
And another practical detail the sources mention, RCS messages go over mobile data or Wi-Fi.
Not the old cellular network like SMS.
Exactly, which can mean faster delivery. And crucially for some, it avoids potential per SMS costs. If you're on an older plan or a limited one source even shared a story about surprise SMS bills this could help avoid.
That's a real-world benefit, absolutely. Using data means it's usually covered by your plan. Removes that potential hidden cost of SMS MMS.
Oh, and the sources also noted a tiny related change. The screen where you start new messages. It's reportedly being renamed from new conversation to new chat.
Ah, subtle. But aligns the language more with RCS, right? The chat features.
Yeah, reinforces that idea. You're starting a modern chat, not just sending a basic old message.
Makes sense. Consistent terminology.
So looking at what this simple badge means for you, the user, it's a real quality of life improvement, isn't it?
Definitely. Reduces friction. Makes capabilities transparent right away. Ensures you know when you can share good photos, see typing indicators, maybe even save some money.
Takes the guesswork out of using the newer, better messaging standard. Useful info at a glance, makes the whole experience smoother, more informed.
It's a nice example of how a small UI tweak based on understanding user frustration can make a real difference in daily digital life.
Agreed. Lowers the barrier to entry for a technology that just makes things better. So, wow. We've covered quite a bit of ground in this deep dive, all pulled directly from the sources you shared with us.
We really bounced around, didn't we?
We did. Started with that potential shift in Apple's OS naming, possibly moving to that car model like 26 designation at WWDC.
Right, the branding and strategy side.
Then we plunged into that complex, deeply concerning scheme, North Korean IT workers infiltrating U.S. companies for money and data, highlighting huge remote work vulnerabilities.
Yeah, the cybersecurity and geopolitical angle. Very different.
And finally, we looked at that helpful little update coming to Google Messages, making RCS use simpler, more transparent with that handy badge.
Back to the everyday user experience improvement.
Each piece, drawn from these distinct sources, gives us a unique window, doesn't it, into different parts of our interconnected digital world.
From big tech strategy to hidden state-sponsored threats, down to the little ways our communication tools evolve.
And this is exactly what we aim for in these deep dives. Taking the information you bring, cutting through the noise, exploring the details, finding those critical insights, connecting the dots.
Providing that focused understanding without getting bogged down. Extracting the essence from the material itself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. In a world where the software on your phone might soon be named, like the car you drive, where sophisticated state actors are reportedly running illicit operations, maybe just miles away, facilitated through remote work. And even starting a simple message conversation gets a little UI tweak to clarify its capabilities. How much of this underlying digital landscape that shapes our lives? How much do we truly grasp? And what are the most crucial questions we should be asking? Not just about the tech itself, but about the complex human, economic, political forces acting on it.
Something to ponder, definitely. Next time you get an update notification or start a chat.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We look forward to the next stack of sources you bring us.